Hey nerds, Farmer Jesse here. Welcome to Growers Daily, your daily dose of ecological farming insight. It is Wednesday, November the 19th, 2025, and today we have a great interview in store for you with my buddy, Dan Brisebois. We've had some seed questions come in lately, so I thought I would hit Dan up to help me answer some of them, and as always, he nailed it. So we chat about saving bean seeds that may not be all the way mature yet. We discuss pepper seed saving, carrot seed saving when they bolt the first year, and should you create your own hybrid? We'll see, so let's do it. All right, Dan Brisebois, welcome back to the show.
It's so great to be here.
And it's always great to have you. Obviously, this is like one of my favorite things when we get these opportunities to chat. So I thought maybe we could start with discussing maybe just a little bit about 2025 and the 2025 growing season and your seed saving endeavors. Maybe any big lessons there, any big seed projects going on?
So, I mean, the big thing about this season, it's been dry and hot. It's like maybe the hottest season that I've lived through in Montreal, which is like probably nothing compared to your hot season. And it's been dry. We had no water for the longest time, which has been phenomenal for melons. We've had the tastiest melons. We've had great seed yield. So it's been like dry is really, really good for seed production. So I've been very happy with that. What else is different this year? We used to grow seed crops on landscape fabric. We've been moving away from it the last couple of years. One of the challenges we had in recent years was weed control without landscape fabric, which kind of is obvious, I guess. But we've been doing one row now of many seed crops per bed, and that means you're able to weed on each side. So that's really easy. This like we didn't grow a ton of seed crops this year because we have a lot of inventory. And what I'm thinking about is more the challenges. Like so our seed warehouse we moved it off farm a couple of years ago, and that means that we're not on site during the winter. So I'm not checking things in the greenhouse regularly, and we've had a rodent problem. So we had all these overwintering Brussels sprouts, which I was so excited for, and the Brussels sprouts got destroyed by the rodents. There was also leeks. They got eaten down to the ground, and they still grew back. And we got a great seed crop. So that was the silver lining. And so like this year, it's so much easier to overwinter something in a greenhouse. But this year, we potted up all the Brussels sprouts into like 3 or 4 gallon pots, and they're in a cool room somewhere. And I interviewed Matt Bell from Johnny's as a Seed Farmer podcast guest to get some tips before I did it. So that was actually really helped me out. And and maybe like in terms of like a breeding project I was working on this year, I've been working on with poppies a lot the last few years, and I have one strain that is like pink with like kind of like edges of white throughout it. And I think it is beautiful. And I think next year, we had some really nice individuals this year I was selecting for, and I think next year is going to be the year we release it. So like fall 2026. So that's probably the thing I loved the most this growing season. So that's kind of like the overview.
You mentioned one thing in there when you were talking about the landscape fabric and going away from landscape fabric and then using one row for your seeds, as opposed, I assume, to a couple rows in a bed or something like that. Was that a yield decision or was that a cultivation decision? Why just the single row?
It's really a cultivation decision. So when you're on landscape fabric and you have multiple rows per bed, you can get pretty good early weed control, and then you can just have the crops grow up and you won't have weeds. You have a couple, but you won't have tons. But when we're on bare ground, I guess the thing is with a seed crop, they get tall. So if you're growing radishes to bunch, you can have 7 rows side by side, and you can like get in there and touch anything. It might not be easy with a hoe, but like it's easy to go in. You can use a tine weeder, but when you're dealing with seed radishes, those plants are 4 foot tall. We put in stakes, and so when we have 2 rows per bed, we can't get into the space between the 2 rows, and so the goal is to have really, really good weed control early on and then not have to worry about it later on. But the reality we've seen the last couple years of bare soil trials is we just can't get it good enough. And so having one row means that we can read really easily on both sides, and we don't have to do like crazy hand weeding afterwards or kind of just accept weeds. Like, it's a lot easier. So that's why we go for one row.
I guess I've not considered, there's certain crops that make sense that you would have to sort of trellis, right? Like you're using stakes and then string, presumably, to keep these radishes up.
Yep.
Yeah, I hadn't thought about that. That all that makes sense to me, because we have that same issue when we try and put 2 rows of like peppers on a bed, which we can do, but getting in between them, it ends up being somewhat of a lost cause by the middle of the season. So yeah, no, that makes sense to me.
Are your peppers on bare soil?
Yeah, I mean mulched soil, but yes. Usually, well, it's not bare, but it's like decomposed mulch. So oftentimes by the middle of the season, we're getting something growing in there. We sometimes heavily mulch them, but not every season. Just depends on how much mulch we have available to us at that moment. I'd prefer to mulch them every time. I mean, that certainly makes it easier, but doesn't always work out that way, because peppers aren't a huge profit crop for us. Like it's kind of we sell them okay, and I love growing them, but I think it's the I love growing them and eating them part that really keep them in production for us. So
is it the yield per plant or the price? Like, what makes them
market? We just don't have a huge market for them. We've found here there are people that are interested, but like when we take them to the farmers market, we've got a lot of competition for things like peppers at the farmers market. Restaurants, they're getting just big loads from those same farms. So like price wise, competition wise, we just haven't found the niche for it yet. Love growing peppers. It's just it's been tough. Whereas probably for you all, like peppers love Kentucky. Right, like it is just perfect pepper weather here for the most part, but like maybe somewhere where it's a little bit colder and peppers don't grow as readily, that could be a much easier sell for that area. But yeah, for us it's a little challenging.
Yeah, like I know we're not talking seed in this specific case, but with peppers, like I think of them as a profitable crop because there's just so many fruit per plant, and we can get a decent price per fruit, so like it pencils out really nicely. We do run a CSA, so we're not competing against other farmers at the same market. Like we put the stuff out, and folks will take a lot of peppers, and so I think like per plant, it's definitely profitable. We don't sell anywhere near as much as we do for tomatoes, but they're I mean, we don't do the bell peppers. We kind of do like the longer Italians. We actually grow a lot of Carmen, the F1 hybrid, as opposed to OP varieties you can keep for seed. But people just love them and they taste delicious.
I mean, Carmen, it's hard to argue with that pepper. It's one of the best. When we were running a CSA, we grew a lot more peppers because it was a crop we could use all season and then all the way into November. They'll grow in the field till November, till pretty decent frost here. So yeah, peppers were a big deal for us. Then we'd grow more hot peppers because we could just put those on the table. People could take what they wanted or didn't have to take them. There's certain crops like that are, somewhat CSA crops that work really well in that situation that don't necessarily work at our markets. But you'd also be proud of me because I've still got that pepper going that I got from your farm. That is the I call it the topper popper. But now it's kind of, I've got it where it's somewhat elongated. So it almost, I wonder if at some point it didn't cross with the Carmen because it's kind of long. It's got a really, really nice sweetness to it, but this really kind of beautiful spice as well. So I'm having a hard time deciding what I want it to be, but I just keep selecting and enjoying it.
Well, as long as you're enjoying it, that's great. And you can always select a couple individuals that you like and put them into different envelopes and maybe not do something with them sometime or maybe not. But I'm thrilled to hear that because that was a cross between a Scotch bonnet and some kind of capsicum annum. I can't remember what. It was like an accidental cross. And like I've phased those individuals out. So you might have one of the few lines that's really emerged from this. Like it wound up as a dead end for me. There's a couple individuals I really liked, but you just weren't producing seed. So I'm really thrilled to hear that yours is still going.
Yeah. Well, at some point I'll have to get some seed back to you so you can actually grow it out and see what you think and see how it's changed.
Definitely.
Yeah, that's very fun. I love saving seed on peppers. Even like I've saved some from Carmen before, and you just get interesting stuff when you grow them the next year. Because like for me, when I'm growing peppers now, because it's not a huge market item, I don't mind getting some interesting stuff out of that plot. So yeah, it's been kind of fun to play around with that a little bit. Yeah, another thing that you said was like the dry is good for seeds. And I was thinking about that in terms of like where I think of most seeds coming from tend to be pretty dry climates. And I'm assuming that's like for the obvious reasons that seeds, once they get wet and dry, like it does decrease their germination. But like, is there other stuff I'm not really thinking about there?
I think that's the basic part. Is just when it's dry. Well, I guess it's also disease control. Is you don't have disease pressures the same way in a really dry, arid environment. So you can grow seed that's probably fairly disease-free without too much extra, crop protection chemicals. Like seed production does have a lot of pesticides, insecticides, herbicides in it. Not in organic, but in conventional. And so drier means that there's less reliance on certain of those. Yeah, I think that's the big thing about dry. Now, dry doesn't always mean hot. Sometimes there's dry and cool areas. So there's some crops that won't do good in a dry, hot area. Like some of the brassicas, like just like a cauliflower or a broccoli might not love a really hot area that's dry. They might like a more temperate dryness. But when we're dry, in our dry summer, it's still humid. The air is still humid. It's not the same as like out west. There's certain places where it's dry. The air is dry too. Here we still have certain kind of disease problems, even not as bad as if it was raining, but worse than you might in a drier area.
Right. It doesn't have to be raining to be humid. We go through that too. We went through it this summer quite a bit, really. Heavy humidity, but dry for 2 full months. But yeah. I mean, the humidity will make a huge difference in terms of bringing in disease. Not as much as rain, but certainly will add to that. Anyway, we're going to take a quick break, and then we're going to take a couple Patreon questions for Dan. BRB. Today's episode is brought to you by High Mowing Organic Seeds. High Mowing Organic Seeds is celebrating their 30th anniversary with 47 fabulous new varieties for 2026. Highlights include downy mildew-resistant cucumbers, a poppy that looks like cotton candy, and 12 new tomato varieties. High Mowing offers more than 750 varieties of certified organic, non-GMO vegetables, flowers, herbs, and cover crops, all trialed for optimal performance in organic growing systems. High Mowing has the professional quality seeds and supportive grower reps to get you from seed to harvest. Visit highmowingseeds.com to request a catalog and use code 26NOTILL, all one word, 26NOTILL, for 10% off your order of $100 or more. That's highmowingseeds.com. Today's episode is also brought to you by Farmhand. Farmers who partnered with Farmhand say they grew an average of 63% this year because it's more than software. Farmhand is your business coach and assistant, helping to sell out, save time, and grow smarter with real data from real farms, shaping websites that convert, campaigns that sell, and fulfillment systems that run smoothly. Curious what that looks like? Meet the founder, Ari, at farmhand.partners/no-till and see the same insights and support the fastest growing farms rely on every week. That's farmhand.partners/no-till. All right, back to the show. All right, so we've got 2 related Patreon questions for you today, Dan. The first one is from Patreon member Robert, who asks, quote, Jesse, last season I sowed provider green beans in August with the intention of harvesting for consumption. Well, life happens, and I never got around to harvesting. The green beans were in the ground until frost happened. I told myself, let's pick these beans that were then dried out on the plant and throw them in a box and plant next season, 2025. Well, I sowed them in early spring, 2025. I rehydrated them by leaving in a cup of water for 24 hours, and while the germination was spotty, most still germinated and produced. I'm wondering if you track crops that you save seeds from, example, had bolero carrots in the ground 2025 for much longer than suggested harvest date, and a few went to flower. I left them, and I guess I'm going to get some carrot seed, ? I don't know. Don't really know what to expect here and appreciate any feedback you provide. Thanks, brother. Go small growers. Hashtag Fat Bush Farms, end quote. So yeah, there's a lot there. We do track some of the crops that we save seed on. We save seed on okra. We talked about the peppers and those sorts of things. We do sort of track those. I'm not super technical about it, but I don't know what comes to mind when you hear that question, Dan.
Well, without talking about the tracking at first, the first thing I think about is with the beans. I'm thrilled to hear that Robert got some good germination. The really tricky thing here is that the plants froze, and that's a challenge. So if the bean seed is actually really dry on the plants, they can freeze and it's not a problem. But if they had still been kind of like greenish or not quite dried down, that can damage the plant and can impact the germination. Something you can do if there's a frost coming is if your plants have beans on them, the pods are big, they're starting to fill out, but they're not dried down. You can pull the whole plant and bring it into a greenhouse, let it sit for a couple weeks, and it's going to dry down and after mature, and the germination is going to be high. So that's something that I would recommend for folks who have plants with pods on them at the end of the season, just before frost. You can pull them and bring them in. So that's the bean part.
And when you say that, are you talking put them into pots or put them back into the ground, or just literally pull them into the greenhouse and let them dry on a table?
Yeah, I guess I went quick, and I would just pull the whole plants. You could cut them above ground with like secateurs or with a harvest knife, but you can also just pull it up. The problem is if you pull it, there's the roots and sometimes there's dirt that gets into the seed. But I would just pull it up, bring it into a greenhouse or an outbuilding, something that's not going to freeze, put down a tarp or it could be a drop cloth, and then put the plants on it, and just not too piled up. If they have a lot of leaves, you don't want it to compost, but just kind of spread out, and they'll just keep maturing. With like the energy and the juice from the plants is going to kind of go into the seed, and then they'll just finish maturing that way. And you can do that with a number of different plants, but beans, it works really, really well.
Yeah, that's great. I hadn't thought about that with the freezing element. Can you talk a little bit maybe about the tracking side of things?
I can, but let me talk about the carrots first.
Okay, yes, let's do that. Let's not skip ahead.
So the carrots, there are two things in the carrots that come to mind. One is that Bolero is a hybrid. So when you keep the seed from a hybrid, you're going to get all kinds of different things. And if you were saving seed from a pepper or a tomato hybrid and you got diversity, the plants will probably still yield well. You can still sell it to your customers. They'd be happy. But if you get a diversity of carrots, it can be a real pain to get like a good bunch or to get stuff that looks uniform. So that's one thing. Just the fact that it's a Bolero, it worries me. The other is that carrots are biennials, which mean they produce a root the first year, the root overwinters, and the next year they go to seed. And it sounds like in this case that some of those carrots went to seed in the first year. And if you keep that seed, you are inadvertently selecting against being a biennial, and you're selecting for plants that prematurely bolt. And this could be a problem the next year you grow them. So something like carrots, beets, chard, definitely I would eliminate individuals that go to seed in first year. I wouldn't keep that seed. And the second year is when I'd get the seed. It's fun to try to get seed from anything for sure, but just those are the two caveats that I'd be worried about in this case.
It makes sense that if you save seed from biennial in the first year, you definitely do not want your carrots flowering the first year, and that happens with a few varieties that will occasionally grow. Like it'll happen sometimes with what's that, Atlas? Like it's kind of a funky Parisian market carrot, and it'll sometimes happen a little bit here or there. But yeah, I hadn't thought about saving against the biennial qualities. Like you don't want to save it for a flower. You want to save it for a carrot and then have that carrot be a flower.
So should I get into tracking now?
Yeah.
I'm not totally sure what angle Robert has with tracking. I don't know if he means kind of like identifying the plants that he wants to keep throughout the season. And in that regards, like I have like marking flags and if we're growing peppers, I will go in and mark the earliest plants. If there's some that I can tell, like if I had like 12, 13 peppers on it, I might flag those because they're particularly good. So I will flag individual peppers, even though like I'm not breeding a new variety. Whatever you select is going to influence the next generation. So I'm always trying to choose the best plants. So in that regards, we do choose individuals. I'm not sure if that's the meaning of tracking. In terms of like record keeping, every seed harvest that we do does get a lot number, and we're tracking that in a spreadsheet, so we'll know what year it was produced. We'll know roughly the yield. There's a lot of things we can do with that kind of tracking. And I do some tracking for breeding projects, but I'm always careful because it's not the data that's important. It's the good final variety that's important. And so you can have like 20 things that you're selecting from and get all these characteristics. But if you're only looking for one individual at the end, it's just more important to pay attention to getting what you want than track every last thing. It's just like if you're doing harvest data, it's good to know the total number of something you harvested on a harvest morning, but you don't necessarily want to track how much time it took for everything, and you don't want to track every last bed foot that was harvested from it. Like there's such thing as too much data.
Yeah, absolutely, that makes sense. All right, well, I think that's all good answers. We're going to take one more quick break, and when we come back, we got one last Patreon question to get to with Dan. Be right back. Today's episode is brought to you by Johnny's Selected Seeds. Johnny's Selected Seeds is a proud supporter of Growers Daily. At Johnny's, they do more than sell seeds. They grow them. They trial them to see how they perform on Johnny's research farm in Maine and across the U.S. and Canada. Only the best varieties are added to their catalog and website. When you need proven varieties you can count on and detailed guidance from seedling to harvest, consider Johnny's your trusted growing partner. JohnnySeeds.com. That's JohnnySeeds.com. Today's episode is also brought to you by Marble Seed. The Marble Seed Organic Farming Conference attracts a wide range of regenerative and organic farmers for 3 days of skill development and community building. Farmer Drew Kramer said, "Going to Marble Seed was so invigorating at a time when I needed it most. I picked up tools I'm already using." The conference is the final week in February in La Crosse, Wisconsin. Early registration opens December 4th at conference.marbleseed.org. That's conference.marbleseed.org. All right, back to the show. All right, Patreon question number 2 comes to us from TJ Tillman, who writes, quote, "Hey, Jesse, as I come around to my Patreon anniversary, I have to say I'm still loving all the content. Thank you. I'd love to see some discussion on developing your own hybrid and the process to save and sell your own seed. Anything to be concerned about, and maybe a guest for selling seed internationally," end quote. All right, so discussion on developing your own hybrid. Any thoughts on that?
My first question would be, why do you want to develop a hybrid? Is it because you think hybrids are better than open pollinated, or is it you want to be able to control it so nobody else knows, nobody else can produce it, only you can because you have the parent lines? If it's just that you think hybrids are better, you can have a really good open pollinated variety that you select rigorously under good conditions, and it can do well. If you want to control the intellectual property that is a hybrid, hybrid's definitely a way to go. But the thing is, you don't just create a hybrid. Like, you need to have 2 varieties that you can consistently get them to cross, and that you then get something that's worthwhile afterwards. And so seed companies that grow hybrids, they have a number of parent lines, and let's say you have 10 or 20 different tomatoes, they'll try each of them together to see what the results are. And some of them will give better results than others, but that takes years of trialing. And then you have to also have a way to consistently make sure that the right pollen gets to the right ovary. And so with corn, it's easy to cut the tassels off to make sure some plants don't produce pollen. And then if you harvest only the ears on the other, so if on the plant that's going to produce the seed, you cut off the tassels, that everything comes from another variety. With tomatoes, you have to do that by hand. So for breeding a hybrid, that's fine, but like most of the hybrid tomato seed that we buy, it comes from countries where the labor is really, really cheap, because otherwise a tomato variety would be pretty expensive. So those are the concerns I would have is just, the time to develop the right cross, and then the technology to be able to make sure the cross happens consistently in a large enough volume for a good enough price. I think the crops that are probably the easiest to work with are probably corn and probably squash. Both of those are easy to control what flowers you're going to let go to pollen. And I do know there's a lot of both hybrid corn and hybrid cucurbit seed that's produced in North America. And like even small farms will get contracts to grow hybrid seed for a larger company. So those are the crops I would go for. Other crops, I think I would. I guess it depends what your motivation is. In turn, want me to get into the selling right away, or you want to ask a question or anything about that?
No, if you want to get into the selling, I'd be interested on that.
So, selling seeds, I guess there's two parts to that question. The first is like just selling the seeds, period. And depending where you are, there's different regulations. In Canada, most seed selling regulations have to do with labeling, but I do know in the US that a number of states that you have to register just as a seed seller, and there might be other federal regulations. So there's that part that to look into. In terms of selling stuff internationally, different countries have different regulations, and so you should figure out what the market is you're trying to tap into, and figure out what the regulations are. Like selling seed to Canada is on the easy side. If it's small seed, it's on the easy side as long as it's like vegetables or flowers. Cereals, or like if it was corn, that's actually going to be tricky. But vegetables and flowers, if it's small seeded, as long as it's under 500 grams, so about a pound, you can ship it without a phytosanitary certificate. If it's large seeded, under 5 kilograms, so it's like spinach or radish, under 5 kilograms, so about like 10 or 11 pounds, that doesn't need a phytosanitary certificate. So it's fairly easy to get sent up here. Though in the last year, things have gotten trickier bringing stuff to Canada with tariffs and that kind of stuff. So there are some hoops to get through, and I can't comment on those because I'm still figuring out what they mean. Other countries might be trickier to import into. Or export into, depending how the language works. So I would really look into the countries you have in mind before making a business plan based around that.
And do you all sell much? I mean, do you sell much into the States, or is it mostly Canada?
Yes, so we're growing in Canada, and 10 years ago, we used to grow a fair amount of seed that we were selling on contract to a number of seed companies in the States. And it was easier then, but it's gotten – So selling seed to the U.S., you always need a phytosanitary certificate, but the Canadian Food Inspection Agency had some fairly easy ways to get them, and it was affordable. It was like $15 for like a seed lot. That's like really, really easy to deal with. But it's gotten more complicated, and selling organic seed to the U.S. or shipping organic seed to the U.S. has gotten even tougher. So we no longer ship seed to the U.S. Like it's just gotten too tough for us to deal with the paperwork. I do know a few folks who grow contracts and deal with U.S. seed companies, and every year there's a little bit of a concern if the regulations have changed, and because like really the last 3 or 4 years have gotten trickier. Some of it's government based, but some of it's also what the certifiers are asking for now. So we don't do it.
I didn't realize it had changed so much so rapidly. But yeah, that's really interesting to hear. Dan, I always appreciate your time. I love these conversations. Thank you for everything that you do. And I feel like you're working on something else right now.
So the things I'm working at, the public projects I am still hosting the Seed Farmer podcast, putting out weekly episodes, but I'm also in the process of running a Seed Farmer mentorship. Or rather, the registrations are open and the mentorship's going to be in January. But this is, what is this? This is my second ever Seed Farmer mentorship. So I did a cohort about a year and a half ago, and it's just trying to bring seed growers, either experienced who are just jumping into it, or folks who've been doing it for a bit and trying to get better, just trying to get them to get their seed growing to the next level. And the mentorship's based around 7 modules. The first is kind of like more like basics, but then there's like record keeping and keeping track of that. There's germination tests, inventory management, crop planning, on-farm breeding, selling, distributing seeds, and then also, of course, seed harvest and cleaning. The focus is, I mean, we definitely get into the seed harvest and cleaning, but it's like all the other stuff that there's not a lot of information out there. That's what I'm trying to tackle with this, and so that's what I'm doing right now is this seed farmer mentorship.
Very cool. Well, we'll make sure to put links in the show notes for those things. And yeah, once again, Dan, always appreciate your time.
It's a pleasure, and thanks so much for having me on.
All right. How awesome was Dan? How awesome is Dan every single time? Love that guy. Always a joy to chat with him. We will put links for Dan's work in the show notes. Otherwise, don't forget, No Till Growers is now officially a nonprofit 501c3, so donations are tax deductible and greatly appreciated. It's almost the end of the year. You could start thinking about those tax breaks, and why not No Till Growers? Please make sure to like and subscribe and or follow wherever you are getting this podcast. That is a very easy way to help us out, and we really do appreciate it. Enormous thank you to all of our show sponsors, and if you'd ever like to sponsor the show, you could reach out to Farmer Michelle at notillgrowers.com. Huge shouts to Willie Breeding for the theme music and Mike Hilbert for the production help and editing. Also, shouts to Epidemic Sound for the background music that you can hear. Pick up a hat or a copy of my book, The Living Soil Handbook, at notillgrowers.com to support our work. Big thank you to everyone over at patreon.com/notillgrowers, where at a certain level, or if you just bump up from one level to another, or you sign up in the month of November, you get a shout out on the show. So big shout outs today to Finding Ground Farm. That was our earthworm actually from last month. 2 shouts for joining at the earthworm level, so much appreciated. Anyway, so this week's story, as you will remember, is about a little mix-up, a mishap, if you will, where Rod's date, Rebecca, finds herself on the outskirts of town thinking she's going to meet her partner at this restaurant, but Rob is actually at a different restaurant in town, and she finds herself at this sort of rundown old hotel, and she thinks that this can't possibly be it, but, you know, when she goes to the office, and then when she rings the bell, something not human-like groans from the back, and her impulse is to run, but she decides kind of to stay. I mean, maybe it's like she's kind of frozen there. Before she can really make any sort of decision, out from the back lumbers a large, hairy cat, a troll cat, humanoid thing. It's not clear exactly, but Rebecca's heart sinks as the creature, probably a good 6.5 feet tall, says, "Can I help you?" Stuttering, Rebecca says, "Is there a restaurant here?" Now, the troll cat thing looks at Rebecca incredulously. "Ma'am, does it look like there's a restaurant here? You," he says, "are probably the first person to come here in a long time, and I don't know that anybody has ever asked for a restaurant, but usually it's just the others who come." Rebecca pauses. "The others?" she asks. The troll cat laughs. Such a human question. "Yeah, the others. And that is for tomorrow on The Others." Yep. All right. Thanks for watching and or listening. We'll see you then. Bye.